Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This video is about starting a fresh new series on the channel called Road to FIDE Master. As you may know, I am a candidate FIDE Master as of now with the rating of 2155. So as you can tell, until I will reach the 2300 ELO rating, it's quite a long journey ahead of me. Therefore, I decided to share this journey with you guys. I believe my chess potential was even bigger than that. However, I did not put enough effort into it. I hope that with the motivation from you guys it will change a little bit at least. Therefore, I will be putting more effort into my games, into my preparations, so that I can create better analysis, better content for you guys and for myself, better results, allowing me to get to my FIDE Master title. We'll see how it goes. As of now, I am just after finishing playing my first classical tournament in a while, so 9 analysis will be there for you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so you will not miss any of them. And without further ado, let's start with the analysis of the first round of the first tournament in this series. Okay guys, so as you saw in the intro, I have been playing in the 20th edition of the Baltic Pearl Chess Festival. I believe my first edition was in 2006, so quite a long time ago, but as you can tell, the festival is still going on, attracting many players. In this year's edition, I believe there were over 300 or 400 players, so plenty of them. In the Open A section that I have been playing, there were 60 players, so also quite a big tournament field. I got the third starting number, so my expectations were quite high for the top 3 place. Also, I did not want to lose any rating because, as you can tell, it's the Road to FIDE Master series, therefore I should gain the rating, right? Not lose it. So that was the goal in general. Also, one note is that I was connecting the responsibilities of the player and the coach because I went to the tournament with my colleagues in terms of coaches and some students, so we had around 20 young players to coach, to analyze the games with, to prepare them for the games. Therefore, it was quite a challenging task to cover both the playing side and the coaching side of the tournament, but I believe I managed quite well, even though I'm still quite exhausted after 2 days of being at home. Anyway, that's the introduction. Let's start with the analysis of the first game. So as you can tell, I played against Leon Duda. He was around 15 years old if I'm not mistaken, and the pairings were up like 1 day before the game. Therefore, I expected the opponent to prepare against me, so I prepared myself too. So how did the game go? I started with the move e4, my favorite one. Opponent replied with the Sicilian defense, but he then opted for the variation that he normally does not play. At least I haven't seen such game in the databases, which is the 4 knights variation. And it was very strange for me because, first of all, there was no games in this variation of my opponent when I was preparing for him. That's the first thing. The other thing is that I am playing this variation myself with black pieces, and I've played it online, I've played it over the board, so I thought that he should know it. But the fact that he opted for the variation for the first time in his life, and the fact that he opted for the variation that I have been playing, I had a thought that maybe he didn't prepare for the game. He just went for the game freestyling, let's say, the opening. He opted for something that he wanted to test during this tournament, but he just picked the wrong timing, you know? He picked the variation that I am playing too. So I was not that sure if opponent is baiting me or something, but I thought that maybe he's not prepared. And if he is not prepared, and now I know this opening very well, I might go for the not so obvious line, but a sharp line. So I opted for the knight d to b5 and bishop f4 move. It's a logical continuation. I am hitting all those dark squares, hitting the c7 square in particular. So the case is that black have to be precise in this variation. If they are not, they might lose quickly. I knew that objectively this variation is not the greatest for white, because if black knows the theory, I will not be getting the advantage. But as I told you guys, I felt like this is the opening that my opponent just learned, so maybe he does not know all the nuances, and also I felt like he's not prepared. So for those 2 reasons I took a risk and played a sharp line allowing me to get the high risk, high reward situation. And let's see if this paid off. So basically the move to play here as black is knight takes e4 as my opponent did. The idea is that I cannot go immediately for the fork and getting the rook, because after queen to f6 move I am attacked on way too many squares in order to save myself. So even though I am a rook up, I will be perhaps even losing this position. So before taking there, I have to play a move like queen f3, not only hitting the knight but protecting all those weak pieces. d5 is played in order to protect the knight, and now I go with the check and the rook take. So as you can tell, guys, it's quite a strange position because my opponent played opening for the first time. He then blitzed out all the moves until this point, and on the move number 10 he's down a rook and the computer says evaluation is 0.0. Like, what's going on, right? And as I've told you, this variation is high risk, high reward, because in order to get the 0.0 evaluation, opponent has to be really precise here, and he was not. So the idea is that as of now I am attacked on the c3 square, f2 square might be weak, f4 2, maybe c2, so there are some additional ideas of knight d4 delivering another double attack and so on. At first e5 has to be played, and now the line goes like knight to d4, hitting both here and here. The idea is that I might try to protect the pawn by going to d3 or d1. Queen d3 is not that common move because after knight c5 I might have difficulties defending this pawn longer, therefore queen d1 is the move, and then the variation continues and continues, and it ends in like 25 moves in an endgame. I played such a variation in the classical games both from black and white's perspective. That's why I was surprised that my opponent goes for it, because I knew the variation, and not only that, he didn't know the variation. He took on d2 now. So I knew by default that this move is not in the opening book, let's say, meaning that it's not the most precise one. Therefore, I can try to make something work here. So this was the first critical moment of the game for me, and I had to calculate what's going on. So obviously the candidate moves are taking the knight and taking the pawn. I didn't quite like the idea of taking the knight here because it would allow my opponent to play a move like d4, and even though I'm still a rook up, I was very much unsure about my king's safety, so I didn't want to go for it. And okay, by grabbing the pawn on d5, I am just basically giving away the knight here, right? But remember, I had this rook on a8 taken, so I'm still up in terms of material. So queen takes d5 have been played. Now my opponent took on f1. It took me a little bit by surprise, to be honest. I was calculating mostly queen takes d5 idea, because right now there are possibilities of delivering some discovered attacks, discovered checks, but it does not work that well, to be honest. After knight to f3 move, I have just king to d1, my king is safe, there are no more checks possible, and I am attacking the knight, the bishop. This knight might just jump away in no time, so even though my king is placed a little bit odd, I still maintain the material advantage, so I was not worried about that. Knight b3 was the variation I was more worried about, because my opponent basically goes for the rook, right? He wants to be equal, so I would have to take the bishop, knight takes our rook, takes, and now I found the bishop d3 move with the idea that I want to free the first rank and hit the knight, and the bishop is protecting the pawn so the knight cannot escape, while my knight can perhaps, because after bishop c7, knight c7, king e7, here I have this knight a6 move. So my bishop is able to protect the knight, my king is now protecting the pawn, and I will be able to get the knight. If you watch the evaluation bar in the meantime, computer says that there are some possibilities in between for black to escape with the knight or something, but from my perspective it was not that clear if that's the case, and I was happy with this variation if it happened in the game. But as I've told you guys, my opponent took me by surprise and played knight takes f1 move. This move surprised me mostly due to the fact that the knight is not jumping back ever. This knight will be trapped anyway, so I was not scared about it. So I just decided to trade the queens and play a very elegant move, long castle. I am going away from the pin, I am developing my rook, hitting both knights, and asking opponent a question: how are you going to deal with all the problems? As of now, I'm down on material, if you counted correctly, because I have only one rook versus two bishops, but as I've told you guys, I will be getting at least one knight soon. So my opponent went with the knight e6 move, trying to take away the c7 square from my knight and for my knight to stay there, but he missed a tactical resource I got. And the variation I was worried the most about was the bishop e7 move. It looks like it does not do much, really, but the idea of this move was a very nice one, meaning that if I now want to go away with the knight from the corner of the board, now the bishop g5 move is played with the check to the king, and after king b1, knight d2, this knight is actually escaping. So this move, bishop e7, was what we consider a quiet move in chess, and was really annoying, and I was unsure during the game what to play, mainly due to the fact that, okay, I can take the knight as usual, but now after knight e6, those squares are well covered, and I was unsure whether or not I will be easily escaping with the knight. But opponent went with knight e6 immediately, which seems logical. However, this knight is just overloaded. He has to protect both this and this square, so I can play knight c7 anyway, with the idea obviously that after knight takes c7, I have rook d8 check with the x-ray to the rook with the double attack to the bishop, so this position has to be winning for me too. The knight will be gone, the other rook will activate, so it's a very easy position to continue. So this is the move that my opponent missed. Also, I put this position up on my Facebook page, so if you follow me on Facebook, then perhaps you already saw this position. And yeah, this was the puzzle. Knight c7 can be played, and I have no worries from this moment onwards in the game whatsoever. So my opponent now got into the long thinking process. He opted for the bishop a5, just saying, okay, I want the bishop pair in the endgame. At least maybe that's something I can take from it. But then he played, I believe, once again inaccurately, the move f6, which allows me to play a move like before. Once again, the bishop is overloaded. He cannot take the pawn because he has to protect the d8 square from my rook. And for example, if opponent went with some other move rather than f6, I could not play this b4 move, because my whole idea for this game, for this endgame, was I need to get rid of the bishop pair. That was my idea, and I wanted to do so as quickly as possible. So after move b4, I believe I can get to this situation. Why? Because if the bishop goes to c7, I can then try to play a move like knight b5 maybe, but with the trick, I cannot once again overload the bishop as previously with the pawn, because after king e7, bishop c4, all of a sudden I might lose some material. So at this point, after bishop c7, I would perhaps play knight to d5, which is a safer option, still kicking the bishop away. And after bishop b6, which was played in the game, I also played knight to d5. In the analysis with my students, one of them found a very nice idea, because in general I wanted to make this knight a4 move work. However, after bishop c7, knight c5, bishop c8, I felt like bishops escaped from the exchanges, and even though they are a little bit passive, they can kick away my knight and then activate once again, and I didn't exchange them. And what I didn't see in the game, and my students saw during the analysis, was that I can take knight takes b7, with the idea that after bishop b7 I can hit the both of the bishops, getting the material back, exchanging the light pieces, and so on. So that was very nice of him. I didn't find it though, so I've played knight to d5, also with the idea of exchanging the bishops, because as of now I believe there is no way for the opponent to avoid it. He played bishop d4. If he played bishop d8, I can also try to play knight f4, hitting the discovery attack and this bishop too, so exchange is inevitable for the opponent. He opted for the bishop d4, after which I've prepared c3 move, and after takes, I was happy with losing this pawn, because I didn't care much about it, because I can take on e5 and discover the e file for my rook. However, what I didn't see in the game when I was playing knight d5 is that at this point my g2 pawn is also hanging, and it attacks my rook. But thankfully the dynamic of the position is such that I can just simply attack the bishop. If the bishop attacks the other rook, I can play rook d3, rook c3, and even though I lost this pawn, my rooks are just too good to not win the game. So that was, let's say, a little bit lucky of me. And this was basically the one and only moment in the game that I kind of lost the control, but only for a, let's say, split of a second. My opponent did not go for this move anyway, because he decided that he wanted to create some blockade with e4 move and then with b5 and bishop c4, trying to block all the files for my rook, basically two of them. But then obviously I want to open the files up, so I started with the move rook f2 e1, hitting the pawn, and after f5 f3. So I opened the e file for my rook, and after which I then decided to, well, what to do, right? I have plenty of possibilities. I can either try to open the a file, maybe go for some even checkmate nets or whatever. I can just perhaps simply start pushing the d pawn because it's a passer, so maybe with the help of my rooks it will be winning. So plenty of opportunities for me to win this game. I decided to firstly make some pressure to those pawns so that the bishop will not feel that safe anymore. Then f4, d5 with a very nice trick to it. If opponent takes with the rook, I can now remove the defender of the rook, and if the rook takes now on e5, I can take the rook with a check, saving this rook. And if opponent tries to give an in-between check, I can just cover the check, making my rook safe once again. And going back after d5, bishop d5 might be also considered, but then I am pinning the bishop to the rook. So quite a nice tactic with this d5 move, and the idea was that d5 move prepares the penetration of the 6th rank. So after g5 I gave a check, I took one pawn, I took the second one, and basically the more exchanges there are, the better for me, because more files are open for my rooks. And the game continues like this: rook d2, rook d3, check, losing a pawn. Now I gave an in-between check, very nice one, in order to be able to push b6. Obviously I couldn't play b6 straight away because of such move, so I had to be precise. So I gave a check, I pushed the pawn, so as of now this king is not safe. I have two rooks, I have a very advanced passer, so nothing to stop me. My opponent went for the bishop a6 move, after which I gave a check. I played rook d6, preparing the classic ladder checkmate. After this move my opponent resigned the game. So as you can tell, last, let's say, 20 moves was all about the technique, and did not take me much thought how to win the game, because I had so many possibilities. But in the middle game, let's say, I had to be precise in terms of calculating. Thankfully I knew the variation, my opponent didn't, so it felt like quite an easy win for me, to be honest. So first round, first win, very nice to see such outcome. I will just show you the review also. So as you can tell, pretty nice, pretty good game by me, pretty clean. 98 accuracy always feels nice. I played this game basically flawlessly with no inaccuracy whatsoever at the 25 ELO rated level, so quite nice. I liked it a lot, and this was a good prognostic before the rest of the tournament. So a win is a win, 1 out of 1. And the next game I've played with the black pieces, and if you are curious how it goes, subscribe, like a video, and we'll see each other tomorrow in the next analysis. Thank you for watching this one. See you. Bye bye.